Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film, and thank you all for joining us for our closing night film, Ellie and Abbie and Ellie's Dead Aunt, which is a film that I absolutely adore, and I'm sure you will as well. I am very, very happy to present the director of this great film, Monica Zanetti. Monica, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hello, very happy to be here.
So tell us how this film came about for you.
This film came about because, particularly in Australia, one, we don't make a lot of queer films, and when we do, they're made by straight people, and which means that I was finding they were often getting, not representing an experience that I thought was, my experience.
Yeah.
And by that, I really mean a happy ending. Like, I'd seen so many films, particularly around lesbians, there's this famous trope of like the lesbian dies at the end, or, they get shrouded in shame and go back to their husband or something like that. And I just thought, that's just not my experience. It's not the experience of my friends. And I wanted, to see a light-hearted lesbian prom film, basically. So that was kind of where the nugget of the idea came from. And then the other big inspiration was the fact that I knew, like, in having these realizations of being like, I want to see positive queer representation because that's my experience. I was like, that's my experience because of people that, came before me that didn't have that experience. They had to fight for me to have this experience. Some people like my uncle, who I know had a very different queer experience than what I've had. And, so that's where, and I needed to acknowledge that in the story. And so that's where the storyline of the aunt came from.
Okay. You mentioned that Austria doesn't really have queer films. Why is that?
Oh, look, Australia. I mean, to be fair, we don't make a lot of films because we don't have a lot of money in the industry. We make great films when we do, but this is not high on the priority list unless you are a filmmaker that feels very passionately about pushing a story like this forward. It's hard to get funded, it's hard to get distributed, it's hard, it's really up against you if you want to make something that they consider to be niche. And so if you don't have the fight to really fight and push it through every single one of those hurdles, it's going to fall over. And yeah, also we're a bit, behind. We only got marriage equality here 2 years ago. Like, I think people think we're quite a liberal country, but we're actually quite conservative.
Okay. You mentioned that your uncle had a different experience with his growing up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, he came out in the 60s. He was very much, he was out. He didn't hide. He had a long-term partner. He had conservative parents that really, my grandparents, who really struggled with it, with him being an out gay man. It was obviously a very different time. And, whereas I got to, have my loving liberal parents who were on board from day one. And, and I think he was very much part of the culture that had to, you could exist as a gay person in bars, specially designed for gay people. And, I've not had that experience. While there are definitely spaces that I'd say I don't feel safe, generally, I can be in the world and feel pretty safe. And that's, a very different experience to what he had. And then he also lost his partner, Gary, who's also in the credits. He lost him to HIV 20 years ago. And, that having to go through that and knowing that that was always a chance, of that generation of falling in love with someone, there was always that risk that could happen because that was such a big part of their history. That's something that I've not had to experience that. I've been so lucky.
Programmers talk a lot. I mean, all year long, people have said, you have to see Ellie and Abbie, you have to see it. And I finally saw Ellie and Abbie, and it just so completely lived up to its hype. And I guess what I didn't expect, I loved the film, I love the central characters. I love what they were going through, but the film has such an emotional pull that I just didn't expect. Can you talk a little bit, especially with the aunt and her backstory, can you talk a little bit about those layers of this movie?
Yeah, it was really important to me that the aunt character wasn't just a caricature, because I think, and again, kind of looking at the history of queer cinema and what we've had in the past, or queer representation in media, it's either, you know, very, from what I've witnessed, very highly sexualized, or the opposite, where it's like just a fun punchline character who's there to serve others. You know, if you look at something like the first season of Queer Eye, like it was that kind of a, you know, there's no sex, they're not sexualized at all. There's, you know, you don't have that layer to them, but they're just funny. And so I guess it was really important to me that while she is a funny, you know, character, that she also was a person that lived a life and had, you know, who had her own love story. And that, yeah, it was really important to me that that was very much part of her story. And to include that, and also for Ellie, because I guess Ellie was kind of having the same realization that I was having of like, you know, you and your fortunate life is because of other people. And so I wanted Ellie, you know, I didn't want Ellie to be a character that was struggling with her sexuality. That was something I really didn't want. But then I wanted to acknowledge why she wasn't struggling, why, you know, her life was a bit easier. Yeah, and just make sure that that was really properly explored as opposed to just something being added in.
Thank you so much for this film. It's an amazing film. Can you talk a little bit about the ensemble of this film? I mean, everybody sort of fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. Everybody's so very good, and everybody just has layers.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the really nice things about it, is that everyone kind of has their own journey. Even Miss Trimble has a little bit of a journey. But I think when trying to get actors, like the actors we got, so for example, Zoe Tarakis, who plays Abbie, and Sophie Hawkshaw, who plays Ellie, they were relatively newcomers. Not anymore. They're both, Zoe in particular is now in Wentworth and doing some really big things. But Marta, who plays Ellie's mum, is one of our finest, you know, Australian actors, and is very a very important part of the culture. And so getting someone like her, and someone like Rachel House, who plays Paddy, who's one of New Zealand's finest actresses, I was like, I wanted to make sure that to get someone like that on board, that they had characters that they could really engage with and get excited with. And, you know, the same thing of Paddy's character, you know, she's funny, and she, again, provides a lot of relief, but again, it was very important to me to know that she has an arc, and her reason for being there is very important. And I think too, just from a writing experience of being like, every character that's here is here for a reason and is here to serve a purpose, and not just elevate the protagonist's story. They have their own story and a reason to be in this world.
Where did you start your festival run?
We opened the Mardi Gras Film Festival in Sydney when we could still, in February, so we could all still be in a cinema, which was incredible, absolutely incredible.
As I mentioned, I'm a huge fan of the film, and you know, I like the fact that people are going to be able to enjoy it in their homes. But it would have been so amazing to experience this in a capacity auditorium and just feel the energy and have people just, you know, just so happy. What was that experience like? Because this is such a crowd-pleasing film.
Yeah, it was amazing. Because the other thing that when making this film that was really important to me, and something that I noticed, was that like me and my mum go and watch romantic comedies at the cinema, and something that we love to do. But it's obviously always heterosexual. And then I would watch queer films by myself in my bedroom. You know, there's something much more kind of secretive about them. And I wanted this to be something that you could go watch in a cinema with your mum. And so to have Mardi Gras Film Festival opening, you know, and that cinema holds like 800 people who were there with, you know, with their mums, and my mum was there, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like everything that I wanted it to be. It was that experience. It was such a special night. It was something that I think, you know, even if this year had gone on as normal, it definitely still would have been the highlight of my year.
What were some of those films that you remember where you saw yourself on screen, or what are some influences you had growing up?
Definitely But I'm a Cheerleader by Jamie Babbitt. That's a real good one.
Yes.
and that was kind of the only one for a very long time. But a lot of it was in TV representation. Like that's where, and I think, you know, you do that thing where you find queer characters in TV and you just latch onto them whether or not you think that's your story or not. Like obviously like Buffy was something I latched onto, even though I didn't really love that story, the Tara and Willow storyline. I found quite toxic at times, but you know, I just grabbed on because it was there. But in recent days, and this is the thing that's so exciting about progress and things, like all my favorite TV shows that I've watched over lockdown have been, you know, stories that centered on queer characters, like shows like Feel Good, Work in Progress, you know, even to an extent the new L Word, I think has been, it's just so wonderful that there's so many out there and there's so many storylines and so many characters that you start to be like, oh, that one's like me, oh, that one's like me, that one's like me, you know, because of different reasons. You don't have to kind of be like, oh, that one's gay, so I guess that's me. There's such a rich range of shows and characters out there now. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, what's this year been like for you in terms of working and trying to get work into sort of forging the new reality?
Look, at first it was really hard because it was meant to be a big year of film festivals and travel, and, you know, a film that we pushed so hard to get it made and get it out there that it felt, you know, particularly unfair that it was going to potentially not be seen and not have its moment, you know, its moment where it was meant to take off, and it just was not going to because of reasons completely out of our control. But it turns out I've had a very fortunate year. I've been very lucky. You know, the people that I hoped would see the film have still seen the film. And, you know, I've had great conversations and meetings with people off the back of virtual film festivals. Like, it's, to be honest, other than physically getting to go, everything I could have kind of wanted for this year to happen has still happened. And it, you know, it also helps that a lot of production is now happening out in Australia because we've got almost no virus here. Where, you know, we're really lucky and we can start opening up. And I know a lot of American productions are coming here currently because it's a safe place to film. So I feel very fortunate with my year.
How hard was this film to get made?
Incredibly hard. I had written the script and I went in Australia. Basically, the funding model is you can get government funding. Most of our films are funded by the government, but first you have to get a sales agent or a distributor attached first. That's step one. And we've only got maybe a handful of sales agents and distributors, and I went to all of them with my script, and they all said the same thing, which was like, we love this script, we want to back it, this is the kind of thing we know we should be making, so we want to make it. And I'd be like, okay, brilliant, here's the cast I want to use, they're 50% queer identifying. And then go, oh no, like oh no, like you can't make decisions like that about the cast, we're not going to have quotas like that, that's not how this works, like you're the diversity, like we're backing you. And, you know, that kind of sense of like, we're willing to invest in you, but this is too much of an ask and we won't do it that way. Which is, you know, the cast I have now, which is arguably a brilliant and, again, amazing actors from our country. You know, most of them had said, like, you know what you should do? Maybe if you rewrote the mum and made it a dad, that would make it easier for us, because then, you know, it's easier to get a man that sells a film than a woman, which was just so, you know, ridiculous and, you know, insulting to Mardi, who had been the lead of like 3 of our most popular television series at once. Like, it was so stupid. And so I just was like, okay, I'm going to crowdfund it. I'm going to crowdfund it and I'm going to shoot it. And then you'll come, like, build it and they will come. And so we crowdfunded the shooting budget, which we raised $50,000, which is not a lot of money to make a film, but a lot of money to crowdfund. Yes. We shot it in 10 days. And then 2 days later, I got on a plane to Cannes Film Festival with a little teaser that we'd cut from the footage that we'd finished shooting 2 days ago. And I just went and I just met with every sales agent, distributor, anyone that would meet with me, for 5 days straight. And I came back from that trip with our distributor attached, some kind of a post-production house attached, and then the kind of promise of post-production investment from Screen Australia, who, you know, it was hilariously, I couldn't meet within Australia. I had to go to Cannes to meet with them, where they had like an open door policy. And yeah, so that it literally was a process of having to make it. I was like, all right, if I can just show them what this can be, I know that they'll see what I see. So that's how it got made.
Why do you think this is so universal?
I think because, you know, falling in love and high school crushes are so universal. The experiences of what Ellie is feeling, everyone has felt that, no matter who it was they were feeling that about. So I think that's really universal. And then also the themes of like mothers and their children not quite, you know, even ones that are really close, still not quite understanding each other, still having something there that's not quite communicating. I think that's a very universal theme.
Exactly. So are you sort of working toward getting distribution for the film?
We are in the process of having all those conversations. So we got our excellent Australia one, who we ended up getting, Arcadia, who did not make any of the comments that the other ones had made. And then, yes, now we're in the process of selling off different territories, which I think most of those will start to be announced pretty soon.
Oh, great. Congratulations. I'm so happy.
Thank you.
So what are some other projects you're working on?
I've had a big year of development, I think, as we all have, because there was time to develop things. So I've got some TV projects in development, one that might be very closely linked to this film. And then I've also got potentially some other upcoming work. Unfortunately, like not one of it is anything I can publicly announced, but some more directing work on the horizon as well on other people's projects in early next year, which will be very nice to get back behind a camera.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. The film is Ellie and Abbie, Ellie's Doesn't. We are joined by Monica Zanetti, the director. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight. I'm sure you're going to love the film as much as I do. And I'm going to talk to Monica a little bit more after we break and grab some photos. Thank you so very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.